Alright, today we're working on a 2002 Dodge Ram 1500, 5.9 liter. Customer complained of coolant leak. I put my radiator pressure tester on there to find the leak because I couldn't find one while it was just sitting here. Way down there, past the dipstick, it's hard to see. On the timing cover, coolant started leaking out, and also there's a residual trail from the water pump. So we got two different leaks. We're going to do a timing cover gasket today and check the chain and replace it if it's got any slack in it. Let's get started. Alright, first thing you want to do, get yourself a coolant bucket and drain the radiator. Oh, that little plastic sucker is pretty hard to turn counterclockwise. I had to use some pliers to get that drain to open up for me, but she's draining now. Alright, first thing I did was get the coolant reservoir out of the way and the upper hose out of the way. What you want to do is get yourself some spanner wrenches and get that clutch fan off. That's the first thing you want to do. And then we'll be taking the shroud off and start taking pulleys off. Here's my spanner wrench. I've drilled multiple holes in it to fit different size pulleys. You can make your own out of a piece of metal. I just put bolts in them to fit different size pulleys. But that clutch fan came off really easy. That's typically not the case. Once you crack it free, it'll just spin right off. So now I got to get this fan shroud loosened, get this washer fluid out of the way, and lift that shroud and fan out probably at the same time. Alright, I disconnected the two wiring harnesses on the washer fluid, and there's a hose down there too. That washer fluid did not want to come out of the shroud, so I'm just taking it out with it. Only two bolts hold the shroud in up at the top on each side, and there's two clips at the bottom it pulls out of. You got to use a little bit of force. But with the shroud pulled forward, I was able to just grab the clutch fan right out. Now I'm going to pull the shroud off. Alright, pulled the shroud out, just left that washer fluid right on. Now we're all opened up in here. First thing I'm going to do is take this belt off, take that idler pulley off, and then start working on the water pump. Got to take the hose off. You got a hose right here. It's a metal line that goes to a hose. It's pretty rusty, so I'm going to be real careful with that. That's a 15 millimeter on that tensioner. Alright, I'm actually going to start with the alternator and AC. 13 millimeter on the back of the alternator and a wiring harness. Clip those off. 14 mil on the front bolts of the alternator and 13 mil on the AC. I disconnected the wiring harness up here and down there, and hopefully I don't have to take apart the AC. That way I don't have to recharge it. But let's zip those off real quick. Alright, so we got the alternator off. There was a bolt or a nut on the back of the lower alternator bolt. That was a 14 millimeter, so you gotta put a wrench on there on the back. And the AC just kind of slides out of the way a bit. So our next step is to take this big bracket off. Those are all 14 millimeter. Alright, I got this big bracket loose now. There is a metal pipe that goes to the water pump right here. You're going to want to take the hose off of this end. One of the bolts to the bracket holds down that pipe right there. And then you should be able to start twisting and take that out. It's sealed by an O-ring, so if you have to reuse this pipe, replace the O-ring. But with that pipe out of the way, you can get to that last bolt hole right there, and now this whole thing is loose. And we can take it out of the way. All right, I didn't notice this one bolt on the side. It's a dipstick hold down. Looks like it's a 13 millimeter where all the others were 14. And these bolts that hold down this bracket are different lengths, so make sure you take note of where each bolt goes. All right, now we got everything nice and open. Not a bad time to change your thermostat. I took the lower radiator hose off. We got this upper water pump hose to take off. That's why we had to take the bracket off to get to that. And the top bolt hits the pulley if you try to put a socket on it, so use a wrench, or it has a Torx right in there. So I'm going to unbolt this water pump, take her off. All right, water pump's off. We've got a lot of room here. It's a little tricky to get this guy off because it was swollen up. But I took all the bolts out of the water pump first, compressed that clamp and twisted the water pump. It came off. Now we're going to work on getting that harmonic balancer off. The center bolt could be a 30 millimeter or 32 fits on there, but it's a little sloppy. It might be a 30 mil. That's coming off next. All right, I don't have the correct harmonic balancer puller for this, but there's 3 flat spots on the inside of that harmonic balancer. You'll loosen that big bolt in the middle, bring it out a bit, and then set up your 3-jaw puller or a harmonic balancer puller tool and pull that sucker out. All right, this 3-jaw puller is a little too big, but I was able to get the claws to hit the flat spot. My size smaller, I broke it. So I gotta get a new one a size smaller. But this one worked. As I turned the ratchet, it is actually coming out. It's actually coming out really smooth. I like that. Use that washer to figure out how tight it is. Still got a little more. All right, now it's tight. It's time to take the 3-jaw puller loose. See if that harmonic balancer is ready to come off of there or not. Probably not. Looks like I gotta reset the 3-jaw puller with the center bolt further out. I've had to take spare bolts before that were longer in order to get these deep ones out. But yeah, that harmonic balancer is not loose. It's time to tighten the puller back up because I pulled that bolt out further to give me more room to press it out further. All right, so I backed that center bolt out. You can see the gap. Set my 3-jaw puller back up. We'll start tightening it again. Sometimes you got to do this a couple times using this method. We'll keep tightening until that washer gets tight. All right, washer's tight. Take the puller back off. Loosen this up. And that balancer is out far enough that it'll wiggle free. There we go. That's how you take the harmonic balancer off. You can get one of those 3-jaw pullers real cheap at Harbor Freight. But if you use them a lot, oh, they don't last that long. But they're cheap. Alright, here's our timing cover with the harmonic balancer off. They recommend changing the oil pan at the same time. You can get away with putting RTV on where the oil pan mates, and you might not have any leaks, but oil pan's gasket is definitely recommended. We're going to start taking all these bolts out. There's one that goes up from the oil pan into the timing cover. We're also going to be replacing that seal in the middle, crankshaft seal. All right, going to take all these bolts out. All right, came across a little problem here. This bolt here, I took that bolt out. This bolt does not want to come out. You can see how corroded it looks in that corner. Sometimes the bolt seize up in this timing cover. So what I'm going to do is bust my torches out, give that a little heat before I try wrenching on it again, because I do not want a bolt to snap off in there. But you can see right around this crack going down, that's where the coolant was leaking on both sides. And that's why we're doing this job. But yeah, do not force these bolts. They can snap. Give them some heat. If you don't have acetylene, use some MAP gas, propane, whatever you gotta do to just heat it up a bit. Hope that bolt come out. All right, I heated up that one bolt. That was the only one I needed to heat up. Got it out. So they're all 14 millimeter, 13 millimeter on the oil pan. And I had to give it a little bit of force. You don't want to crack these, but there's these ears on the side you can get a pry bar in. Gave it a little force and it started wiggling. Coolant will come out. After I cracked it loose, I was able to pull it out with my hands there. And boom, we've got our timing cover off. Here's our timing chain. And look at all that slack in there. It was running a little funny with no codes. It had gotten a tune up and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes these loose chains will make your motor run a little funny, might give you a misfire every once in a while, whatever. So I was already prepared to change the sprockets and chain because this has 200,000 miles, and I figured I'd run into this, and I was right. So time to change those. All right, to set the timing on these, it's super easy. You've got a mark on your cam sprocket right there, and you got a mark on your crank. It's a little dot, and these are just going to point towards each other, straight down on the cam, straight up on the crank. Don't be confused by other marks like that little line. It's going to be this circled dot just left of the keyway. So if we look at our new set, got a new chain. On the new cam sprocket, there's just one little dot there. And on the crank, there's your timing mark just left of the keyway. So they have keyways, so you can't put them on wrong. You just point the cam down, point the crank up. Now we're gonna take the bolts out of those sprockets, put the new sprockets and chain on. I got both of my bolts out, the cam and the crank, and we should be able to slide these out. Stuck on the keyway. Give it a little wiggle jiggle. It's coming out. I'm gonna get your cam off first. Starting to come out, but not very easily. And that crank should just slide right off. Yep, she's coming out of there. There it goes. Try sliding your crank forward, then the cam, and it'll slide out. There's that. That was a 16mm bolt on the top. Now with the gear and the sprockets out of the way, I'm going to get my whole gasket surface cleaned and prepped. Same thing with the timing cover. All right, so we got our timing cover all cleaned up. We're going to change the seal in it. So I just got some cones. You can use a big socket, whatever. And from the back side, we're gonna tap this seal out. All right, and there it goes. All right, all cleaned up, seals out. I used a razor blade to get the big gasket stuff off. I got that nice and clean and dry. Cleaned it off with some brake cleaner on a rag. Then use my favorite gasket remover disc to clean it up nice and good. Now we're going to give it a bath in the parts washer. All right, got it cleaned up. Got a little bit of grease I'm going to put in here. Hope that seal slide in. Well, this one does not go in all the way. It's going to stick up a hair. I'm going to fit in there as smooth as possible. Use a block of wood and try to get it started straight. It's going in too far on this side. I'm just going to focus on that side. Back to this side. That's not working very well. I'm going to start again. You don't want to tap on it like this. You can warp the seal. There we go. Now we got it going in pretty straight. It sounds like the seal bottomed out. This one sticks up. Yeah, it's looking good on the back side. I'm going to level it out a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty much in there. That's how you put the timing cover seal in. Just the easiest way with no special tools. All right, we got our timing chain on. Put the crank sprocket on first. Get your chain wrapped around the cam so that that timing mark is straight down, and slide it onto the keyway. Give it a few gentle taps. Make sure you're lined up with that keyway, but it goes on pretty easily. I put a little engine assembly lube on the chain. I'm ready to put that timing cover back on. I'm going to put a little bit of black RTV on this oil pan gasket because I don't really want to replace it right now. And here's our new gasket. No RTVs going on this. This is rubber. It's got these raised lips. But for the water pump gasket, I might put some blue RTV on that. And the kit gives us a new O-ring for that pipe coming off the water pump. Alright, I took down that cam sprocket to spec. Put a little RTV on there where it's going to mate with the oil pan. Got all my bolts in. The trans line hold down back in. Now I'm going to put that water pump on. Then after that, I'll put the crank pulley on. Alright, so I got the new water pump installed with the hose up top. So I'm going to put that crank pulley on. And then put our AC and alternator mounting bracket on. Get that pipe, put it back in the water pump after that. Pretty much just reassemble, reverse order. So I think that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. Hope that this helped somebody.